So I was recently having a conversation with one of our students, and she was kind of struggling. And we are far enough into the semester, maybe about 6 weeks. She's a freshman, and just kind of having the struggle. And the struggle was, I was like, well, so what's your major? And she said, I don't know. I was like, okay, which is not unusual. So, well, what do you want to do after college? She's like, I don't know. And then I was like, well, what are you interested in? All these normal questions. And she said, I don't know. And it was one of those situations like, yeah, what's your major? I don't know. What do you want to do after this? I don't know. What are you even interested in life? And the answer is, I don't know. I'm here, she's like, because it's what you do. Like, I graduated high school, and this is just the next step so many people take. It's super common. This happens all of the time. And in fact, I think it happens maybe more often than people think, is that you find yourself in a place, whether that's in college or in your work or just anywhere in life, and you're like, why are you here? And the answer is because I guess maybe I'm supposed to be here. I guess because it's the next thing, which makes sense for so many of us, right? Where we say, here's this student. I know what to do. I just go on to the next grade. I've been doing this ever since preschool. When that got done, I went to kindergarten. When that got done, I went to first grade. This repeated theme. So I got done with 12th grade. I know what to do. I go to the next grade. And I know how to do it. I mean, she's been in school forever. She knows how to go to school. So this is for a lot of us. I know what to do, and I know how to do it. And we can spend the rest of our lives just like that. I know what to do. I have a job. And I know how to do this job. And if I didn't, then I wouldn't have the job very long. So I know what to do, I know how to do it. Or when it comes to relationships, when it comes to life, we just sometimes can find ourselves, I'm doing this because I know what to do and I know how to do it. Even when it comes to faith. We talked about this last week, where the sense of we can sometimes just show up and we go through the motions. Why? Because, I know what to do. You go to Mass on Sunday. And I know how to do it. Like, again, as I said last week, I know all the moves. I know all the lines. I know how to do this. But there's something missing in that. I mean, there's something good about that. Yeah, I know what I'm doing. I know how I'm doing it. But there's an author, he's a speaker also. His name is Simon Sinek. And he highlights that this is how so many of us live. That so many people and so many organizations, so many businesses, they know what they do and they know how to do it. And that's fine. That's good. But he points out that those who are great among us, those individuals who are great, those businesses that are incredible, those organizations that run phenomenally on a different level, they don't just know what to do. They don't just know how to do it. They know why. They know why they're doing what they're doing. They know why they're doing it, how they're doing it. In fact, he has a book and a talk called Start With Why. That's so many of us, we start with what? So many of us, then we go on to how. Like, okay, this is what I have to do. Here's how I do it. And we often can never get around to, but why am I doing this in the first place? And so, last week we started this series called Growing Through the Motions, because so many of us, when it comes to life, we know what to do. We know how to do it. When it comes to our faith, we know what to do. We know how to do it. And we never stop and ask the question, but why am I doing this? Why is this important? Why does this matter? The idea even of asking, like, why should I even do this? And so we end up on this kind of meaningless cycle where even in life, it's just you get up, go to work, come home, go to bed, get up the next day, go to work, come home, go to bed. It's just kind of this process, this endless cycle of lather, rinse, repeat. And so we can find ourselves trapped. And I'm just doing this because it's what you're supposed to do. I'm trapped because I know what to do, I know how to do it, but I don't know why. Because we realize, right? We realize there's something negative about just going through the motions. There's something negative about just going through the motions. It's just frustrating. Again, think about this. Lather, rinse, repeat. At the same time, there's something necessary about going through the motions. If we just lather, rinse, repeat, that's not bad. Actually, what you get is you get clean hair, which is not, you get the desired outcome. And the same thing is true when it comes to a lot of us showing up and doing what I know I'm supposed to do, doing it how I know I'm supposed to do it. It can be negative, but it's also necessary. We realize that without these motions, without them, we can't grow. That's why we started the series, Growing Through the Motions, because we need to go beyond this, just going through the motions. We need to go beyond just the what and the how. We need to get to the place where we actually are growing. Why? And why do we need to know our why? We need to know our why because at some point, this is all going to be really too difficult. At some point, life is going to be too tough. At some point, our prayer and Mass is going to become monotonous. At some point, it's going to feel like I'm just going through the motions. At some point, it's just going to feel so mundane and meaningless. Like, why would I even do this in the first place? That's why I love this first reading. It's from 2 Kings. So we get the end of the story. The end of the story is there's this guy, his name's Naaman. Apparently he's from Syria. And Elisha he gets healed from his leprosy, and then he wants to worship God, which is awesome. But we need to go to the backstory. And some of you might already know the backstory of Naaman the Syrian. So Naaman the Syrian was a Syrian. His name was Naaman, and he was a general. He was a commander in the Syrian army. He was incredibly successful, incredibly powerful. He was incredibly wealthy, and also he had a really good reputation. Now, he was an enemy of the people of Israel, but he had everything he possibly could want. Except Naaman had a problem, and Naaman's problem was, for all of his wealth, for all of his power, for all of his fame, for all of his virtue even, he had leprosy. It was one thing he couldn't do a thing about. He was trapped. He had a death sentence hanging over his head. And at one point, one of his servant girls, which is remarkable too, this servant was actually a Jewish girl that he had kidnapped from her home, and now she served in his home. She served his wife in his home. But this girl goes to Naaman's wife and says, well, there's a prophet in Israel who can heal your husband. He can heal my master. So Naaman finds out about this, says, great, let's do it. He loads up everything and goes down to Israel, goes to the king of Israel saying, hey, you can heal me. And the king thinks, what the heck? I don't know how to heal anybody because no one can heal leprosy. Elisha hears about this and says, send him to me. On his way, Elisha doesn't really want to come out of his house, doesn't really want to greet Naaman the Syrian for whatever reason. I don't know why. But he sends out one of his apprentices and says basically, tell Naaman, go to the Jordan River and bathe in the Jordan River 7 times. This is the big thing. Naaman, when he hears this, is ticked, right? Because he's come down all the way from Syria, all the way to Israel, and he's ready for the miracle. He's ready for the big healing thing. And Naaman is so upset. He's like, are you kidding me? He says, I've seen the Jordan River. It is a muddy trickle, which is actually pretty much what the Jordan River is now even. It's this muddy trickle of water. He says, we have pristine, beautiful rivers where I come from. Why in the world should I get into this muddy river and bathe 7 times? Stupid. Like, what's it going to do? And this is so clear, right? Because this is you and me. This is almost every single one of us. When it comes to like, I want something great in my life, it's like, well, okay, what's the great thing that's going to make it great? What's the big thing that's going to make the big difference? And then God says something like, okay, I want you to get baptized. I want you to go to mass. When you fall down, I want you to go to confession. And we're like, no. Give me like the big thing. Because here's what I think it captures many of our hearts. What captures many of our imaginations is this like natural innate talent. I don't know, this is kind of a little curveball, but let's go to this. I think a lot of us, we really love the idea that someone is born great. Or they do one great thing and that's where they become great. So this notion, this idea that either we're born great or we do one thing and become massively great has, we love those stories about the people who are just, the natural. The person who, without any effort, seems like they're just gifted. One, because that's pretty neat. Secondly, I think because it lets us off the hook. Like, why is I'm not good at this? So there's this guy, he's from Hungary. He was an educational psychologist named Laszlo Polgar. He was convinced that genius was made, not born. He was convinced that it wasn't like a big moment that made a genius, and it wasn't the innate talent of a genius. His theory was, you could take any healthy child and create a genius out of them. That you could take any healthy child and provided the right instruction, provided the right opportunities, they could become great by simply doing mundane, menial tasks over and over. So this is the scientist in Hungary. He puts out an ad because he knew I can't do this experiment on someone else's kids. I don't have my own kids. I don't even have a wife. So he put out an ad across Europe basically saying, I want to do an experiment. Are you willing to marry me and have kids with me? And then we're going to experiment on our kids. So anyways, there's this woman from Ukraine named Clara. She answered his ad basically and said, yeah, let's do this. I think this could be neat. I'm not sure that this is ethical, but it's what happened. It was the 1960s. Everything was nuts. So Clara and Laszlo, they meet, they marry. They have their first daughter, Susan. And I think they had her in 1969. Laszlo was saying, okay, what could possibly be an area where I can create a genius? And he said, well, it can't be in sports because who knows what Susan's athletic abilities will be. It can't be like in drawing or like painting or in writing because that's kind of subjective. But chess. Chess is incredibly objective and you don't necessarily have to have any physical qualities, but you do need to have some level of genius, some level of expertise. You can measure it. So starting very, very young, he started training Susan in how to play chess. By the time Susan was 5 years old, he brought her down to this, adults all playing chess, and she cleaned the room. She cleared them out. In fact, some of the accomplishments, he had two other daughters. He had middle daughter Sophia and the third daughter Judith. Judith was the most accomplished of all of them. But for example, Susan, here I have some stats. Here's some Laszlo Polgar and their kids' stats. When she was 15 years old, she became the top-ranked female chess player in the world. She was the first woman to ever qualify for the Men's World Championships. Just a couple years later, she became a grandmaster in chess. I believe that she was the first woman to ever do this. And she was also the first woman to ever achieve the chess Triple Crown. The next daughter, Sophia, at one point, Sophia she played a game. Actually, it was a series of matches against grandmasters in the city of Rome, I think at the age of 14. It was called the Sack of Rome because she destroyed all of them. And it's still known as one of the top 5 greatest moments in chess history, male or female. Judith is the youngest. She's the most accomplished. In fact, almost everything I read about her said you can't actually name all of her accomplishments, all of her achievements. One of them that was incredibly significant, she became the youngest grandmaster in history when she became a chess grandmaster at the age of 15 years and 2 months. But she went on, all 3 of them went on to become experts. They became geniuses because Laszlo Polgar's theory was this: take any healthy child, present them with the opportunity to be great, to become excellent, and just give them, here's the slow steps, here's the small steps. If they take these small steps, if they go through these motions, they won't just be good, they can be great. And he demonstrated this, he proved this. Again, I'm not sure how ethical this is, but they're all pretty happy, they're all pretty healthy right now. But the recognition of how he did this was he made it fun. He made it so that they wanted to play. In fact, Susan, I mentioned, he trained her from almost infancy. But the next 2 daughters, Sophia and Judith, he didn't let them start playing chess until they actually saw their older sister go off and they wanted to be like her. They wanted to do what she was doing. Because there was this why they had behind them. And the why at first was, this is fun. And then the why became something even more powerful. It's not just fun. They realized we could be great. And they simply desired to have fun, to play this game, and to be great. I wonder so many times when it comes to the Christian life, all these mundane things, these daily, day in and day out things that we're asked to do, we go through the motions. I wonder if we realized, if you do this, you could be great. Like if you actually show up and do what the Polgar kids did, then actually something will happen in you that if you show up and go through the motions, it's not only possible to be a saint, it'll happen. That's the thing, is do we believe that this is true? Do we believe that if I do what God asked me to do, it's going to be powerful? Naaman, the Syrian, I'm not going to do this. It's too basic. It's too mundane. It seems like it won't. What could it possibly do? And that's when his servant says this. He says, if the man of God had asked you to do something difficult, if he asked you to do something incredible, you would have done it without hesitating. But because he's asked you to do something that seems simple, something that seems powerless, something that seems mundane, you refuse to do it. Why? And this is the same thing is true for us, right? We were asked to go through the motions of getting baptized. That did something to us. In fact, every Christian writer from the very beginning, they saw the story of Elisha and Naaman, and they realized this is baptism. This is what happens to us. No matter how successful, no matter how good, no matter how powerful, no matter how famous or wealthy we might be, every one of us is born under a death sentence. Every one of us is born in a broken relationship with God, with ourselves, and with each other. And here's God who says, okay, do this. Get baptized. And that's why St. Peter says baptism actually saves you. Baptism does something. It changes us. Because these are not just meaningless tasks. These are meaningful actions, meaningful tasks oriented towards a worthy goal. And that's that same thing with all the sacraments. Next week we're going to talk about prayer. But this week, to look at the other sacraments, not only baptism, but also something like confession. I mean, think about this. Like Naaman, I can have so many good things. My life can be full of blessings. My life can be full of all these good deeds I've done, all these people I might have helped, all these people might love you and you love them in response. But also our life has this brokenness. We realize I have this sin that I can't do anything about, that I actually need God's mercy. And God says, well, yeah, that's why I gave you confession. So just go, well, what it's going to do? I'm going to go talk to a priest and it'll actually change something. And the Lord's like, yes, that's actually how it works. To just go through these motions. Again, with faith, like we talked about last week, to do this, knowing that this is a meaningful task oriented towards a worthy goal, it actually changes something. It actually does something for us. Or even just Mass. Like, again, going to Mass. So many of us, we know the what. What do you need to do? I need to go to Mass. How do you do it? I do it like this. But it can feel burdensome, right? It can feel like, but nothing happens. I'm here because I have to be here. I'm here because it's my obligation. I'm here because it's my duty. We even call it, Sunday is a holy day of obligation. Because of that, it can even be even more likely that we feel like we're just simply going through the motions. But there's something more. For your faith, for my faith, we know what to do. When you fall down, go to confession. Every week, we need to be refed by the Lord, so go to Mass. I know what to do. I know how to do it. But the question is, that needs to be asked, it needs to be answered, is still, but why? I'm convinced that the moment you find out why, you will never experience Mass like you're going through the motions ever again. Like once you find your actual why, you will never again go to confession just like it's going through the motions. You'll never ever experience, it might be an obligation, might be a duty, might be a task that you're like, oh shoot, I have to choose this instead of something else. But you'll never ever feel like that emptiness, that hollowness, that meaninglessness of I go to Mass and nothing's happening. I'm simply going through the motions. Why? Because we realize, we show up, what's your why? Maybe you could say, I go to confession because I know that this heals me. So my why is I want to be healed. Or maybe you show up for the Mass or confession and you say, I know that this makes me holy. So I show up, why? What's your why? I want to be holy. Or you realize that I know that confession, I know that Mass, it gives me life. So I show up, what's your why? I show up because I want to be fed. Those whys, like I want to be holy, I want to be healed, I want to be fed. Those are all really, really good reasons why. Because why? Because it demonstrates that Mass and confession are powerful, right? They do something. They're not mundane. They're not meaningless. But I think there's a deeper why. Why did Naaman go into Jordan River? Another way to ask is in the gospel today, there are these 10 lepers. Why did they all run off and go show themselves to the priests? Both Naaman and these 10 lepers, they go off simply because they were asked to. I mean, think about these lepers. Why did they run off? Because Jesus said, here's what I want you to do. Their why was a who. I'm doing this because someone that I trust has asked me to do this. In fact, we even realize, why are we here? Why are we at Mass? We're at Mass because Jesus said, do this, all of you, in memory of me. That's why we're doing it. I mean, again, we can say, oh, we're going back to duty. We're going back to simple, just kind of like being in the trap of I'm obliged to do this. And that might be the case. That could be the case. Or it could be that the heart of all this why, the heart of everything we're doing is actually love. So last week I talked about this movie called The Karate Kid from the 1980s. I want to talk about another 1980s movie called The Princess Bride. Both of them are great winners. But the story of The Princess Bride begins with his grandfather reading a story to his grandson who's sick. And he's reading the story of The Princess Bride. And that story, The Princess Bride, opens up on this couple. There is this young woman named Buttercup, and there is this farm boy who serves on the farm where she lives, and his name is Wesley. And it says that Buttercup would boss Wesley around and tell him what to do. Like, see, farm boy, gather me some wood. And every time she asked him to do something, he would simply respond with the words, as you wish. And he would do it. And at one point, the grandfather's reading to his son, he says, at one point, everything changed. When Buttercup realized that every time Wesley, the farm boy, was saying, as you wish, what he was really saying was, I love you. Because this is the heart of this, right? If Jesus says, do this, and we do it, and our why is because he asked me to do it, that is not the slavery of being bound. That's not the slavery of duty. That is the freedom of love. To realize that you get to show up not because you feel like it, but because he asked you to, because it matters to Jesus that you are actually at Mass, that it matters to Jesus that when you fall down, he wants to heal you. And every time you and I go to confession, every time you and I go to Mass, we're saying yes to the one who loves us. When we realize that that's the why, everything changes. I was talking with a young woman the other day, and she had said that when she was in college, she didn't really give a lot of thought to her health. Didn't give a lot of thought to like how she ate or how she moved in life. And at one point, one of her Bible study leaders, who's a great friend, had asked her and some of the other women in the Bible study, like, okay, when you have kids someday, if God willing you have kids, do you want to be stuck on the sidelines watching your kids live life, or do you want to actually be present to them and live life with them? And that just convicted her. She realized, wait a second, I want to be with them. I don't want to be stuck on the sidelines just watching them live life. I want to be able to be present to them. I want to live life with them. That's what I want. Therefore, here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to start eating more healthy. I'm going to start moving. But her why were these who's who don't yet exist. And as often as she's like, I'm going to choose healthy, I'm going to choose to move, I'm choosing love. I'm not just choosing exercise. I'm not just choosing fitness. I'm not just choosing health. I'm choosing love. I'm choosing to love these people who don't even yet exist. I think everything changes when our why is a who. And this is the last thing. We've been asked to come to Jesus in the sacraments. In baptism, where we were originally washed clean and made his, we're asked to come to Jesus in the sacrament of confession when we fall down and we need his mercy, to come to the Mass every single Sunday, every single holy day of obligation. Why? We show up and we do what we know to do. We do what we know how to do. But our why has to be the who. That I'm here because he wants me to be here. That you're here because he wants you to be here. That we do this because he's asked us to. We do this because he said it matters to me when you're here and it matters to me when you're not. So we show up and we do these seemingly mundane things, which are actually very meaningful and are oriented towards a worthy goal. Because the goal is him. Because the why is love. And because we can grow through the motions when our why is a who.